We are talking all about the Grant and Highland neighborhoods, which are located right here and is north of downtown Salem. The Grant neighborhood and the Highland neighborhood are actually two separate neighborhoods, but I'm going to be lumping them into the same video because they are very, very similar in terms of home style, the price points, and the overall vibes of the neighborhood. This is going to be a great neighborhood for you if you like the idea of living close to downtown Salem, but you want to live in a single family detached home that is petite, cottage style, and might even need a little bit of TLC. This neighborhood is going to give you easy access to community gardens, the farmers market, which is directly in front of the Capitol building, and then easy access to downtown Salem, and just a lot of the cute parks in this neighborhood. The homes in the Grant and Highland neighborhood really fall into just a broad spectrum in terms of how much TLC they need. Some homes don't need any renovations at all and may have already been updated. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum are going to be those homes that need a total gut job and renovation. So for my DIY babes out there who are just itching to get their hands on a cute little home that they can DIY their hearts out, this is going to be a really great neighborhood for you to look into. Most of the homes in this neighborhood are smaller, so do be mindful that if you are wanting a large, expansive home or a larger lot, generally, you're not going to find much of that in this neighborhood. These homes are petite little babes, and so you're not going to find too many houses that are above 4 bedrooms, and you're going to be lucky if you find 4 bedrooms in this neighborhood at all. Most oftentimes, those 4-bedroom houses have 4 very small bedrooms. There are some houses that have larger lots that back up onto the alleyway, which is a really cool distinctive feature of this neighborhood. What's really great about the houses in this neighborhood that do back up onto the alleyway is it means that you're typically going to have a long and skinny lot, which allows you to have things like a shed or potentially an ADU if the lot qualifies for that. But having alley access provides you with ample opportunities to expand your house or potentially create a configuration where you put a tiny home on that lot so long as it qualifies with the city and rent it out. So there's a lot of potential within this neighborhood based on the house that you find. There are only a handful of neighborhoods in Salem that have alley access, so if that sounds like it's going to be a priority for you and you like the idea of potentially a tiny home, an Airbnb rental, this is one of the neighborhoods that you should be considering. Some houses in this neighborhood do have garages, but they are petite little things, and most oftentimes they function as sheds at this point rather than garages because, well, I guess if you have a tiny car, it would work, but functionally speaking, these garages are just too small for modern day cars in most circumstances. So the takeaway here is that having alley access and a detached single car garage is a very unique feature of this neighborhood and one that you don't find with many other neighborhoods around Salem. Another really great defining feature of this neighborhood is how many people have gardens and flower beds, and that the streets are lined with beautiful trees that create a really wonderful canopy in the spring and summertime. This is one of only a handful of neighborhoods that reminds me a lot of my home city of Portland, and in many, many ways, this neighborhood really is just cute and charming and the quintessential Pacific Northwest neighborhood. It's not often that I have clients who are interested in this neighborhood. Typically, they lean towards Fairmount Hill or the Bush Park neighborhood rather than the Grant and Highland neighborhood. But the Grant and Highland neighborhood is very comparable to Bush Park and Fairmount Hill. The Grant and Highland neighborhood, in addition to the Fairmount and Bush Park neighborhood, are really known for these cute homes, great gardens, and walkable community spaces. But the big differentiator here is the price of real estate. So if you are one of my future YouTube clients who really likes the idea of historic, charming character house, and you're on the fence between the Grant and Highland neighborhood and then the southern equivalent, which is Fairmount and Bush Park neighborhood, it really is going to come down to your budget. If you have a budget that is healthily over the $500,000 mark, you're typically going to find yourself gravitating towards Fairmount or Bush Park neighborhood. If you're somebody who has a budget that is closer to the $400,000 mark, you are probably going to be focusing on the Grant or the Highland neighborhood if you're wanting those cute, charming older houses. This is one of only a handful of neighborhoods in Salem that I personally would consider to be walkable in some sense. And what I mean by walkable is that you can have everything within close proximity to your house, and you don't need to get to those amenities with your car. And let me be clear that walkable is not pertaining to somebody's physical ability or inability to walk. We are talking about close proximity to all of your amenities. I would say that the Grant, or kind of this lower section of this area, is going to be more walkable than the Highland neighborhood. But both areas seem like you could live a car-free lifestyle if you buy a house in either location. The one issue I could foresee arising if you're wanting a car-free lifestyle in either of these neighborhoods is that grocery shopping could be a little bit of a trek for you. So depending on which section of this neighborhood you're in, you are either going to have to walk to Safeway, which is located right here, or the farmers market, which is right here and is open from March until October every single Saturday. Otherwise, you're going to be depending on Quickie Mart options, which I would not consider to be robust grocery shopping by any means. So I am going to say that this is a great neighborhood for quick and easy access to almost everything, plus what downtown Salem has to offer. But the one thing that might be a bit of a struggle if you are wanting a car-free lifestyle is grocery shopping. If you are thinking to yourself like, holy cow, Clarity, this is a whole heck of a lot of information. Can't you just boop a little easy button for me and tell me where exactly I should look? Yeah, friends. Book that one-on-one consultation with me and we can craft a plan for you to relocate successfully to Salem. You can find a link to get on my calendar down in the description below. So you've got a bit of a vibe check on the neighborhood. Let's talk about some of the practical aspects of this neighborhood, like which roads you are going to be depending on when you move into the Grant or Highland neighborhood. The main roads running north to south through this neighborhood is going to be Commercial Street, which is located right here. You have Liberty Street, which is here. 99E, which is located right here, Capitol Street, which is here, and Summer Street, which is here. Running east to west, we have Market Street, which is right here, and then Pine Street, which is located here. Now let's break down the north to south roads in a bit more detail and why they will be so important to you if you decide to move into the Grant or Highland neighborhood. Let's chat about Commercial Street. Commercial Street is a main street not just for this neighborhood, but it's a main street for almost all sections of Salem. It is a great commuting street, and in some sections, it's good for grocery shopping, boutiques, and strip malls. But in this particular section here, it is really just about commuting and can get you from the Grant and Highland neighborhood into downtown Salem or up north into Kaiser. In this section of Commercial Street, this is a one-way road that takes you in the southern direction only. This section of Commercial Street is going to cut through the western edge of Grant and Highland neighborhood and is not going to offer you much in the way of shopping, restaurants, cafes, or other amenities. What it will offer you is a handful of mechanic shops and industrial buildings and a few good, really good dive bars. It's kind of a funny part of town because Commercial Street is almost the dividing line in this neighborhood between the old rail line and then the shipping zones and then residential houses. If you're finding value in this video so far, give it a thumbs up. And if you are watching on your TV, I know how hard it is to like a video or comment on your TV. Don't even try. All I ask of you is to watch until the end because that's good for my analytics too. Thanks, friends. Commercial Street is going to take you south, but this next street is the sister street to Commercial Street, and that is Liberty. Liberty is located right here, and it's going to take you north and is the counter street to Commercial. I feel like for the most part, this section of Liberty is very similar to Commercial. There isn't much entertainment on these two roads, but where I feel Commercial and Liberty Street are different is that it feels like Liberty Street has more office buildings and is a bit more lively than this particular section of Commercial Street. You will find a bit more to offer on Liberty Street in terms of amenities than you will on Commercial Street, but both Commercial and Liberty Street are very functional streets in this part of the Grant and Highland neighborhood, and their primary focus is on commuting. The next north to south street that we're going to be talking about is 99E, otherwise known as MLK Boulevard. Technically speaking, 99E and Liberty Street in this section of town are actually the exact same street. But for this definition, I'm just going to be talking about the upper section of 99E because it can get a little bit confusing when we start mixing in names here. So the section that we are talking about for 99E is this section right here. This part of 99E is going to shuffle you onto Interstate 5, which makes it an incredibly convenient access point to get onto the highway and get your little tookie going either north or south. Just like a lot of other main streets in this Grant and Highland area, 99E is all about commuting and getting you from point A to point B. It really does not have a lot going for it beyond a high level of commutability. You're gonna find a lot of car dealerships further up on 99E, but for the most part, it's just all about commuting. This section right here is part of the very tippy top of the Highland neighborhood and is actually where you're gonna find things like Fred Meyer's, which is a grocery store. You're gonna find some gas stations up here. There's some fast food restaurants, but otherwise 99E dips out of the Highland neighborhood incredibly quickly. And like I mentioned earlier, it just shuffles you onto Interstate 5 without offering you much in the way of amenities beyond the small handful that we just talked about. Next street we're gonna talk about is Summer Street, which is located right here. This is a one-way street that takes you south towards downtown Salem. This is going to be a really important road for you if you are living on the eastern edge of the Grant and Highland neighborhood, because it is a very straight shot into the downtown area if you just continue on and take Summer the entire way. Summer Street is also going to be where the farmers market is, which runs from March until October every single year and is open on Saturdays, which means you could definitely get yourself over to the farmers market fairly quickly from the Grant and potentially the Highland neighborhood. The counterpart to Summer Street is going to be Capitol Street. Capitol Street is the sister street to Summer Street and is going to shuffle you north rather than taking you south. While on Capitol Street, you can connect with Portland Road, which takes you out to Interstate 5 and into Northeast Salem. So both of these streets are pretty darn convenient if you're needing quick and easy access to other sections around Salem, just depending on, do you need to get north or do you need to get south? Alrighty, now let's talk about the important east to west roads. We have Pine Street and Market Street. Pine Street is going to allow you to connect with Commercial Street headed south or Liberty Street headed north, or over to Portland Road, which you could then take if you want to make your way up to I-5. So while Pine Street is smaller and only 2 lanes, one running in either direction, you're probably going to be finding yourself on Pine Street a whole heck of a lot. The next east to west road is Market Street. Market Street is going to have the special ability to connect you directly out to Interstate 5 if you just take it all the way east. This is probably the most direct route that you can take to get to Interstate 5 if you're living in this lower section of the Grant neighborhood. The takeaway here is that the Grant and Highland neighborhood is mostly made up of smaller residential streets. The streets are straight, the neighborhood is pretty grid-like, and that in itself makes it incredibly easy to navigate. The main roads are all going to grid their way through the residential streets, which means if commuting is a main factor for you and priority needs to be on commutability either to downtown Salem or Interstate 5, and you're wanting a smaller, older house, this could be a really great neighborhood for you to check out. This neighborhood has always reminded me so much of Portland and some of the older pockets because the massive trees on the streets are so incredibly beautiful, and the charming gardens with the cute little houses, they just have that funky Pacific Northwest vibe. One of the great things that I think is really special about this neighborhood is that there are community gardens, street murals, and neighborhood parks. This all leads to a really nice community feel around this neighborhood, and sometimes I feel like South Salem lacks that special cozy vibe. If you're ready to talk about developing a plan for your future relocation here to Salem, book that one-on-one consultation with me. If you enjoyed this video, you, my friends, are going to want to watch this one next. Bye-bye.